Good evening. It's WL Finale here. Just doing a little drawing. This is the companion piece, perhaps, to the last painting I did that was posted already. I'm going to, as you can see, I already drew it out. The other one, I think it's called Ghost Face. That would be on the left side of this, and this would be the right side of that. That was a black background with a white ghost face, and this is going to be the right side of a heart. When the two of them connect, they'll kind of look like a yin-yang sort of thing, but form a heart. I'm not really sure how it's going to work, but I'm going to color all this pencil work in with a Sharpie marker, and then paint over that with the same color. I think it was a graphite and paint, some sort of graphite colored paint. A light shading over it. And we'll see how that goes. This is gonna it's gonna be a long form, and I'm just gonna talk about random shit. We'll see how it goes. Still have to bear with me. I'm still getting my talking chops down. A lot of the drawings I do are the time-lapse ones. I like doing those because I can just kind of do my thing, and then when I'm done, can add music to it and kind of send it out to the world. I don't have to concentrate on talking or keeping you entertained. Are you entertained? I didn't see the second Gladiator. I only saw the first one. I was not a big fan of the first one. I know it won an Oscar and stuff. It was, felt like it was unworthy of Oscar status myself. I did like it, but you know, I thought it was a solid action film. I did not see that as being Oscar contender material. Another one I remember not liking was Traffic. I didn't see the Oscar worthiness of that. I won't get into the whole Oscar thing. I was never really a big fan of Oscars in general. The Oscars were a good show for me to watch to see what I should not watch for movies, typically when I was younger. As I got older, I definitely started to like Oscar type movies a little more, but still not a great amount. I dragged my kids to go see Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, and I was a bit horrified. I had high hopes for it. It seemed like a real interesting movie, and then absolutely hated it. It definitely had moments of uniqueness, but overall, I didn't think it was a great movie. I didn't think the plot was all that great, and I just thought it was I didn't think it was as touching as it tried to be. But apparently the entire planet, aside of me and my two kids, disagrees. I think it won a whole bunch of Oscars, and And yeah, so I didn't have my finger on the pulse of that one, but that's okay. Last week, I attempted to do one of these talking things, and I started talking about religion, and I started going off into the weeds, and the drawing wasn't coming out great either. So I shut that one down. But perhaps I will visit that topic again in the future. Yeah, I was trying to articulate my thoughts on religion and whatnot. And it wasn't coming out so good. But essentially, here he goes again, talking his nonsense. Essentially, I see God as like a bio machine. Some sort of continuous, like pretty much like the Force in Star Wars. Rather than, the gray-beard man in the sky that Christianity kind of portrays God as. But I was going off on that whole idea and wasn't making a whole lot of sense. But that's essentially how I see God as this thing that's in all things. And always flowing and always moving and continuously flowing back and forth. I do think that that's part of the success of Star Wars, is that a lot of people didn't quite know the whole philosophy behind it, but that Force thing that that they talk about in the movie, I think that touches something within all of us as a truth that we kind of know but can't necessarily put our finger on. And there's 100 reasons why Star Wars was awesome. Groundbreaking special effects, the action, the explosions, the lasers, robots, yada yada. But underneath all of that was this philosophy of the Force and this spirit that moves through all things, and I think that connected to a large swath of the population and blew it up to something that was much bigger than your average sci-fi flick. And once Disney purchased it, actually long before Disney purchased it, but that all went away. That element's been removed, so obviously they still talk about the Force, but it's as far as kind of a religious element, that's totally been really been gone since Return of the Jedi. It's interesting that those remakes of Star Wars were, you know, as the kids that watched that when they were younger are getting older, it's kind of looked back on with good nostalgia. Kids just they picked up on, you know, they enjoyed that as kids, I suppose, but it was still a trash movie. I think the third one was tolerable at the end, but when I say at the end, like the when it was all said and done, it was a decent movie, but you know, none of them came close to the greatness of the first 3 films. I'm gonna put this out there. It's crazy talk to a lot of Star Wars fans. Not a fan of Empire Strikes Back. You know, it was decent. I will say, when it came out, I somehow missed it and did not see it till years later. I think I had a book or like a comic, graphic novel of it, but I didn't see the movie till probably 4 years after it came out or something like that. But that being said, the movie's not great. And I'm going to give you my argument. With the exception of Hoth, which is a legendary opening of a movie, it's essentially Han Solo and Princess Leia having a lover's quarrel for about an hour and 20 minutes. And I just didn't enjoy that. You know, Luke's with the Yoda on the planet, trying to lift the X-Wing out of the swamp. It's alright, but, you know, nothing great. But a lot of it's just, you know, Han Solo and Leia going back and forth. And you know they're going to get together, you know? Although, do they? I don't know. She had her chance. Till he gets frozen in carbon ice. She could have had a lot of nice romantic nights with the man, but she chose to pretend like it wasn't a thing. And then they end up bitching and moaning to each other. Next thing you know, she finds out he's frozen, and then all of a sudden she realizes she's got some feelings for the guy, you know? She knew she had some feelings for the guy. But Hoth was legendary. The AT-ATs were awesome. The whole snow scene was sick. Great action sequences. And then the ending was solid. we talk about Boba Fett. Like, did they not know how awesome the dude was? What is the deal? I remember, I think his action figure came out after the second movie. And I seem to remember being a huge fan of him before the third one came out. But then the third one comes out, you know, he gets to use some of his tools and all that fun stuff, and then gets thrown into the pit first thing in the beginning of the movie. It was a little disappointing, I gotta say. I could have used a little more of him throughout that movie to even out the Ewoks. You know, a lot of people have a problem with the Return of the Jedi because of the Ewok thing. And I get that, but for whatever reason, I liked them. I really didn't mind them as much as some folks. But I did think that I felt like the first and the third movie had heart. And Empire Strikes Back didn't have the heart that the first and the third one do. You get the feels in those movies at some point. You know, they get the dramatic music playing in the background. Dun, 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 dun. And they have dramatic scenes going on. You get a feel for some of the drama. I suppose when Yoda dies, there's that, but it wasn't the same. I don't know. There was something about the first one, and when he goes back to the planet and sees his parents were murdered and all that fun stuff. Like, there was definitely some stuff that hit you emotionally with that. And then some of the stuff in Return of the Jedi that was emotional, but I feel like the Empire Strikes Back was just a little straightforward. It was good action, but it didn't have that same kind of emotional element. Even when he finds out Darth Vader's his father. What was the Mandela effect with that? He didn't say, "Luke, I am your father." But, I don't know if that's a Mandela effect thing. I think it was just misquoted, and then the misquote got more popular than the actual quote. There's some Mandela effects that definitely feel like they're legit. But some of the ones with the movie quotes, I'm not so sure about. Like "Play it again, Sam," instead of "Play it, Sam." I feel like that's kind of someone quoted something wrong, but the person that quoted it wrong was like, someone that made it popular. And then we just remember that more than we remember the actual one. I was definitely one who thought that the monocle was part of the Monopoly thing. The Bernstein Bears instead of the Berenstein Bears, whatever on that one. I can't, I watched it with the kids, and then, I think I definitely thought it was what, whatever the Mandela effect says that we thought it was, but I don't, I don't know how far of a conspiracy that is, But, I know they're doing like crazy stuff over in CERN, and over in Europe, and that, fucking with some black holes and whatnot. Like, I can't see how, if they're tweaking these, crazy things, that it might not be fucking with the time-space continuum, or messing with our planet in strange ways. So there's definitely things that seem off now compared to when we were, us older folk were younger. Definitely things definitely seem strange now compared to then. And I don't think it's a matter of just some folks getting older and not used to a changing world. I mean, there's definitely some of that. Hey, they don't make music like Elvis anymore, and that was really good music, that type of thing. Like, there was definitely a shift that happened with YouTube when that came out. When I was growing up, like my generation and many generations, is that, I suppose, I just grew up in an era with television, but that was like, for a long time. So, I probably came in 20 years or so after television came out. But it was just everything was, all our references and everything that you talked with everyone else that you knew revolved around, television, movies, and radio. All my life growing up. So when YouTube came around, you know, all our references were like to, you know, movies and quotes from cultural icons, you know, the Fonz, or all our references were to these common things that a lot of people knew. And then when YouTube came out, all of a sudden, you know, my kids are, they're still quoting things, but they're quoting these, you know, short clips from YouTube videos that are, you know, 5 minutes, 20 minutes long tops, and then they're just kind of disposable. Whereas, you know, all the stuff on TV and movies, that stuff all stuck around longer, you know. So there was definitely some sort of shift that happened there. And, you know, when that stuff kind of started happening, that's really when I felt like my age had kind of, you know, that's when I felt I was getting older. You know, for everyone in my generation growing up, I was born in the 70s, so like 2000 was a big deal. You know, all the movies I watched growing up, all the futuristic movies were, you know, 2000, post 2000. You know, at the time, it just, you know, seemed like this time way off into the future. And eventually the time came along. Remember when the year 2000 came along and everyone was like, oh my God, we're coming up to the year 2000. And it was a really big deal because of all the sci-fi stuff, and, you know, it just seemed so futuristic. But, you know, 2000 came and went, and it really wasn't that big of a deal. But then, you know, time keeps on slipping into the future, as Steve Miller says. And, you know, one day I wake up and it's 2022, and then it feels like, where the hell did all the time go? How did I end up this far into the future? And it was really kind of baffling. So it was somewhere around there, like in the, you know, it wasn't even like 2020, although that was crazy. But yeah, like somewhere around 22. I realized this is like the, you know, when I think of the 1920s, you know, like all the roaring 20s, whatever. It's like that was 100 years ago, and that, like, I really felt like we're really into the 20th, you know, the 21st century. And at this point, someone who was born in the 1900s seems like someone from a real long time ago. And that's like a crazy shift in mentality. But I do love this time. Like this, I mean, everything seems uncertain right now, it seems like a real tough time, but there's a lot of cool stuff happening now that it, like when I was working in Boston when the internet kind of started coming out. And I was working at a clothing company, and people were starting to like come around. We were talking to vendors who could kind of they came and started talking to us about taking our clothing and making a website and starting to show it online. And I remember looking into that at the time, and they were like, well, how does this work? It's pretty much just like a catalog, but it's going to be on the web. And I remember them setting up stuff and kind of showing us how you show the clothing and cool ways you can put it online. But it was such a new thing. And when email first came out, that was a big game changer. I used to do courier work for my father-in-law. And, courier work was a big deal because you had to get documents to people in a timely manner, and everything had to be delivered by hand. The actual documents, and you had to, deliver them from where you were to another location. And time was a big factor for all that type of stuff. And when PDFs came along and email came along, like all that stuff just went away. And it was a huge shift. And that was like a really exciting time to watch the internet kind of develop. I remember at some point when I was working at that clothing company, I remember someone was able to go online and look up directions to a place and print them out on a printer. And like to be able to just say, I want to go here, and print out directions and bring them out to the car with you and go somewhere and use those directions was at the time pretty mind-blowing. We used to have a book when I was doing courier work that had, it's like hundreds of pages. Excuse me. Hundreds of pages. And each page was like a town map that showed all the streets. And you pretty much had to drive around with one of those in your trunk so you could get to all the places you needed to. And the internet pretty much made those insignificant. And then when the GPS came along, I remember I was going to a concert with a buddy, and he had one in his car. And like when you didn't even have to like worry about like looking up where a place was, you just type the place into the thing, and then it just kind of directed you. So you didn't even have to like, because even when you printed out the directions, you really had to be on your game, watching the road and looking for signs coming up, and what you had to really look at street signs to see what if the street that you're looking for was coming up. And then when the GPS system came along, it was like you just typed it in, and then it just kind of like told you where to go. Yep, the turn you want is coming up, so in 300 feet, the turn that you have to make is coming up. Like before that, you were like, okay, where's the street? It's coming up, and you're just sweating the whole time, the entire ride, if you were going someplace where you'd never been before. And like the idea of just going to a location and not even worrying about it was a huge, huge deal. So like, it's been awesome to watch those sort of changes take place in my lifetime. I grew up in the print industry. I went to college at a time where computers were starting to come out. When I was going to school, there was still some schools that weren't even using computers yet. And for typography, you had to like measure letters and the space between letters like manually. And there was a lot of like cutting and pasting. I worked at newspapers, and you had to cut articles out and paste them on paste boards. There was like all this hand type stuff that you had to do. And I went to school for graphic design, and we were starting to use computers. So I've watched the computer graphics programs take over all that stuff. And then I've watched everything evolve since that point too. So it was like there was an old process that had been around for kind of years and years. And I watched it get updated, and then everything that I grew up with, I'm starting to watch all that kind of go out by the wayside as well. But there's a time, there's like a sense of timing, like a speeding up of things now that I don't think was here before. Like, it seemed like when I was younger, big changes came, and like it took a long time between big changes, like the technology for like the refrigerator, air conditioning came out. In the 60s. I know it came out long before that, but it became popular in the 60s pretty much. But like, not a whole lot changed over the course of like a 5-year period. Some things would come, some things would go, but like when I was growing up, cable was a big thing. I think in 1980, cable came around, and some people had it, and the rich folks had it, and then eventually it worked its way into the homes like everybody. But it took a long time. And like the VCR, that lasted for a decade. And then the DVDs started coming out. the DVDs stuck around for like another decade, you know, like, so it was like things stuck around for a long time once they were invented. And then we're just at the spot now where, you know, every day there's a new thing that's like kind of mind blowing, that's revolutionizing everything. And then, you know, even with AI now, you know, I can't even imagine what it'll be like in 10 years, but the amount of change that's happening on a day-to-day basis is insane. You know, it was funny. I was a big music fan growing up, and you know, I was around for the Walkman. When the Walkman came out, I got that as a birthday gift, and that was one of the best things I've ever received. But at some point, you know, when Apple came out with the iPod, which, you know, allowed you to put a bunch of music on, and, you know, carry that around with you. For whatever reason, that never interested me. And you would think it would, being a huge music fan that I was. But when the iPod Touch came around, that was, I like had to go right out and buy that. As soon as they had like the iPod where you could actually read email on a handheld device, that blew my mind. So they had the iPhone come out, and they also had a version that was called the iPod Touch. And the iPod Touch pretty much did everything but have a phone. And you had to, there was no service plan with it. So you had to be in an area with Wi-Fi to use it. So as long as you had Wi-Fi, you could use it. But that was like probably the most mind-blowing thing I've seen in my lifetime. Because when we were younger, we're like, you'd be out and about and something good was going on television, and be like, I wish there was like something you could watch. You know, something. I wish there was like a little mini TV you could bring around. And you know, little mini TVs did come out as an invention, but it never caught on. Like it was too bulky. It was definitely too clunky. So when like this one device came along, and I know there's a meme out there, and I'm sure a bunch of you have seen it, but you know, it shows like a smartphone on one side, and then to the right, like all of the things that it replaced, and the amount of things that it replaced is bananas. And it wasn't right off the bat that you knew what it was, you know, how it was changing the world, but it really didn't take long at all before you found out like how life-changing it was. But that was a big deal. But I loved the Walkman when it first came out in the 80s. You get a tape, pop it in there, can walk to tunes and play tunes, you know, wherever you went. Still remember just walking to work, like a 40-minute walk to work, and I had no problem because I played like 2 songs by the Allman Brothers, and I was there. I've been walking a lot lately. I try to do 10,000 steps a day. A couple of years ago, I went to the doctors, and when I saw how much I weighed, I was like, oh my goodness. I had always kind of maintained a certain body weight, and then it just seemed like it kept going up, but gotten on over 200, and I was like, oh, I gotta rein this in. So, I tried a number of things to kind of curb the growing of my scale number, but I really love food, so it's difficult. And I love coffee, but I don't really love coffee. I really love the cream and the sugar. I think I have a problem with sugar. I just love it so much. So I've been trying to do more exercise to allow me to continue eating